Hey there Retro Games fans, this is Andy C from Pieces of 8-Bit. What a weird advert that was. Very much the trend, I think, of the 6th generation consoles to create weird adverts. Not as weird as or as disturbing, I would say, as the Xbox One, but still pretty weird nonetheless, I'm sure you would agree. So, well, you've probably guessed, it is the end of the month. If you read the title of this, you know exactly what this video is about. If you're a fan of my channel, then you'll also know what this video is about. It is now July, and I have reached the end of my month with the GameCube. So today I'm going to be reviewing what it's been like to live with this little device in my living room for the last 4 weeks or so. What sort of games I've been playing. I'll talk to you a little bit about the history of the unit as well, and a little bit around the specifications. Like I said, some of the games I've been playing. And if you want to get back into GameCube, what are the sorts of things that you can do to get yourself back in? A few of the tips and tricks on how you can get yourself back playing some GameCube games in 2025. And then I'll tell you whether I think it's worth it or not as well right at the end. As I said, 6th generation console. I love the GameCube, as you've probably gathered from the way I've been talking about it over the last month or so, but it has not been a perfect ride for Nintendo. It wasn't a smash hit, as you will discover in the next section. So stay tuned for that, and without any further ado, let's get down straight into a little bit of history around the GameCube and how it came to be. I'll see you there. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the history of the GameCube itself. Started development in 1998, came out in Japan in 2001, in North America, slightly a couple of months after Japan. We had to wait in Europe until 2002, which I always found was somewhat annoying. At least with the Switch 2, we had a worldwide release, which was so much better. I hated the fact that we had to wait, and it wasn't just a little bit of time. It was usually could be as much as 6 months or even a year that we would have to wait for it outside of Japan, which was somewhat irritating. It was in production until 2007 and sold for about $200. So it was actually not that expensive. It was comparable in price to the PlayStation 2. But unfortunately, the GameCube, codenamed Dolphin, when it was in development, didn't sell anything like as well as Nintendo would have hoped. So they sold 21.74 million units. But that is compared to 140 odd million units that the PlayStation 2 sold, obviously the best-selling console of all time, even to this day. It was a very, very competitive generation, the 6th generation. You'd still got Sega in the market there in the shape of Dreamcast. Obviously the Dreamcast didn't sell too well, and that was the end for Sega. They just decided that they weren't going to make consoles anymore, which was a real shame. And then you got the new kids on the block as well, in the shape of Microsoft, who came along with deep pockets, made a few peripherals, obviously understood PC gaming, and came along and shipped the Xbox. The Xbox, as the newcomer, sold as many units as the GameCube, and that must have been a real disappointment to Nintendo. And I think what must really have stuck in the craw for Nintendo was the fact that the PlayStation 2 sold so well, and there is always that what could have been if they hadn't let Sony go off and do their own thing when they had that joint venture back in the 90s and we hadn't seen the original PlayStation. Now obviously for us gamers, we're all very happy that that happened. For Nintendo, I'm sure, probably even to this day, I imagine it's something that they probably think what could have been, but there you go. So yes, we were also seeing a bit of a downturn for Nintendo at this point. So whilst the Game Boy had sold somewhere in the region of 118 million units, we'd seen the N64, which came before, only sell 32 million. and we'd seen and before that the SNES was 49 million. So we were seeing a bit of a decline here, and it was quite a big drop off from the 5th to the 6th generation. The N64 selling 32 million, struggled to really capture the market. A lot of people said the cartridges were too expensive and they shouldn't have gone for cartridges. Obviously Nintendo ditched the cartridges for this. We'll talk more about that later. But I think Nintendo were losing their way a little bit with the traditional TV top consoles, and after the N64, people just weren't as interested in Nintendo anymore. The other problem that they had as well is that they were very much still considered a bit of a toy, whereas the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox were considered quite grown-up consoles. And those of us that have been playing those Nintendo consoles back in the 80s when we were kids, we're now adults. We wanted something a little bit more advanced. We've got these amazing graphics and these fantastic third-party titles on the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 especially. The PlayStation 2 library is crazily big. It's something like 4,000 titles in the PlayStation 2 library. Loads and loads of third-party support, and it wasn't even the most powerful console in the lot. It was probably, it certainly wasn't as powerful as the Xbox, but it was easily the most popular. People just loved the original PlayStation and they wanted more of it with the PlayStation 2. So that for Nintendo was a problem as well. So that sort of family-friendly thing that Nintendo went for, they hadn't quite sort of solidified that properly yet. It was definitely for them their USP, but it was also their downfall a little bit as well. People were just like, well, I don't think I really want that. It's a bit of a toy. I'd rather have the PlayStation. So I think a lot of people in that generation had both. I had a PlayStation 2 and I had a GameCube, and I think that was generally, people had a PlayStation 2. Those people that had a GameCube typically would have had a PlayStation 2 or an Xbox as well. So it was one of those sort of consoles where you might, if you could afford to buy two, you might have two. I don't know anybody that just had a GameCube. I'm sure there were plenty of people out there that did, but a lot of people had both, or just one. And if you were picking one, it's typically the PlayStation 2, let's face it. So yeah, that lack of third-party support I mentioned before as well was also a problem. So a lot of third-party developers didn't support the GameCube, and so they just weren't the titles either. And of course, that is a problem for Nintendo. I think for Nintendo now, they do rely on their own IP a lot, and that does seem to pay for them. That does seem to pay their way a lot better nowadays than it did back then. I think the GameCube was the start of them solidifying that a little bit more and introducing a few new titles and new styles and graphics and those kind of things. They could do so much more with the GameCube, and so that was that was what we started to see, but it was too little too late for the GameCube, unfortunately. So let's talk a little bit now about the specifications and the hardware itself and some of the accessories that you get with the GameCube, and then we'll move on and then we'll talk about the bit that I'm sure you've all been waiting for in the shape of the games that I've been playing this month. Alright then, let's talk a little bit about the hardware of this little device here. So quite a small device straight away, that's the first thing you notice. A lot smaller than the Xbox. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the GameCube before, this is not going to be new, but for those that you haven't, a lot smaller than the original PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, and it was meant to be quite portable, and it's got the little handle on here, and that's why it was often called lovingly the handbag. So quite a small little unit. I really like them. I think they're quite sweet little units. Maybe part of the problem actually in some ways. 4 ports on the front as you can see there, and it came in a range of colours. Most famously the purple one, which I used to own a purple one. I wish I'd never sold it. I now own the boring black one. There is an orange one as well. Obviously, the rarer the colour, the more the price. The purple ones are more expensive than the black ones, even though I think the purple ones were as popular. I don't know why they are more pricey. I just guess they're more desirable. So, actually around the device itself, we've got our ports on the back for video. We've got expansion ports on the bottom, and it allows you to dock. There was a little dock that you could buy that it would sit on that allow you to plug things like Game Boy Advance games in. Yeah, so that's the sort of outline of the box itself. In terms of what's inside here, this is a PowerPC architecture, so it's an IBM processor. When it's running something called a Gecko processor at 486 megahertz. It has 24 megabytes of standard system RAM and 16 megabytes of DRAM, which was more expensive but very fast RAM, which they use for buffering input and output. It has 3 megabytes of video RAM, and that video is powered by something called an ATI, who were a big player in the graphics card market back in the day. ATI Flipper, and that is running at 162 megahertz. It was also capable of outputting Dolby Pro Logic 2, which was sort of a new standard at the time, and a lot of new sort of AV amps and things like that supported Pro Logic 2. It was a much simpler technology. It basically sort of worked out the 5.1 surround sound itself, so you needed less kind of data and complexity to do it. It's quite clever. I don't really understand how it worked, but it was quite cool, and I've noticed it plugging it into a modern AV system into my living room, that the sound actually on it is really good. It has inside the proprietary GameCube game disc, and again I think this is another bit of a problem for Nintendo, in that they didn't have DVD when the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 did, and even the Dreamcast had CD support in it. So a proprietary disc format. Problem with this was it was only 1.5 gigabytes when you could potentially store up to over 8 gigabytes on a double-sided DVD for PlayStation or Xbox. So bit of an issue really there as well. They're quite sweet little discs nonetheless, and of course it was the first time that Nintendo had gone for optical format over cartridges. Something which they sort of decided that they'd learnt their lesson from the Nintendo 64, but then and then went for a proprietary format. Now there was a different version of the GameCube that came out called the Panasonic Q, which was a media center which did have full DVD capability in it. Nice sort of silver unit. I actually wanted one, but I couldn't get one. It was stupidly expensive, and it's one of those. I can't help feeling that if Nintendo had done that from the start, maybe the GameCube would have been a little bit more popular. Who knows? It also has memory card support, so we've got little memory card. They came in 8, 16, 32 or 64 megabyte sizes. Nowadays you can pick up, this is a 1 gigabyte memory card, so you're never going to fill that. This is a standard 8 megabyte one, and I filled this after playing about 3 games, so not a lot of room on that, but pretty standard fare for the time, apart from the Xbox of course, which bought the hard drive concept to consoles as well, which everybody thought was really cool, because we had 10 gigabytes on there right away, which was fantastic compared to the PlayStation, which was also limited to these memory cards as well. The controllers then, so we have the standard controller, and this is actually a controller that I really like. Your controller would match the color of your console, so if you have the purple one, you'd have the purple one, and it's a really nice controller actually, and it's sort of in that sort of generation where you'd got the second analog stick, which was really cool, and it started to get used for sort of looking around, which has become kind of almost second nature when you play games now. When you consider for this generation, that was still a pretty new concept. So when I played Zelda Wind Waker, it was actually quite unusual to have this other stick where I was kind of just looking around all the time. So that got perfected through this generation. Quite a nice way to set your controllers up. They also had something called the Wavebird, which was a sort of imagine this bit here. Well, I'll put a picture up in a second, but basically a wireless version of the GameCube controller, which again, wireless controllers were few and far between at that point, and they were generally quite expensive. But yes, nowadays of course we expect those to be those are sort of second nature really. We also had some Game Boy Advance connectivity. So this is a Game Boy Advance connector. I mentioned that there was a dock as well, so you could sit it on the dock and that'd allow you to put Game Boy Advance game cartridges in. And what you could also do is you've got one of these little leads. This is a non-proprietary one actually. This is one that I just bought from Amazon cheap just to give it a go, but I had the official Nintendo one at the time. You plug them into the back of your Game Boy Advance, and then you plug your Game Boy Advance into one of your slots on here, just in one of your controller ports as so, and then some games will support that. So Wind Waker for instance, you get sort of a little companion that appears on here and helps you with some of the things that are going on in the game, which is quite cool as well. So that was quite a nice little feature. We also had other things as well. So we had some other kind of peripherals that came along. So this 6th generation was really the era of all these expansions. So we had light guns and things like that in previous generations. This is the Donkey Kong bongos, and I'll tell you a funny story about this. I used to go and play. On my friend's GameCube at lunchtime. So bearing in mind at this point I'm working, I'm an adult by this point, and we used to go around and we played on PlayStation. He lived just around the corner from work, so we go and play for half hour, 45 minutes, and we would play, you know, Star Wars, you know, Rogue Squadron. We play stuff on the PlayStation 2, and then both of us bought the bongos, and we both went round and we did 2-player bongos, and we sat there, and I mean, we were still young men, but as young men in our sort of 20s, and we suddenly had a moment where we just kind of went, what are we doing with our lives? It's 2 grown men playing on Donkey Kong bongos. And again, this is sort of the problem, really, that this console was very much kind of still considered a bit of a toy, and it was ridiculous, and we never did it again. But it, you know, that was quite cool. But this was the generation where we saw a lot of these things. You know, we saw dance mats and SingStar microphones, and the first sort of camera appeared on the PlayStation 2, the iToy. So we did see a lot of these sorts of things appearing in our, you know, on our console. So a lot of expansion accessories like that as well. So there you go then. That was a little bit about the actual hardware and some of the peripherals. So let's talk a little bit about some of the games that I have been playing throughout this month. So this is going to become a catchphrase, I think, for me, but the games make the console. I say it every month. Obviously, there are the odd exceptions, but generally, when we're talking about games consoles, the games do make the games do make the console. Now, this is a Nintendo console, right? So we know what we're going to get. This is a pretty solid set of games and IP that we know are going to be standard on any kind of Nintendo console. And if you watched my last couple of videos, so you'd have seen that I've been playing this month, I've been playing Luigi's Mansion. Absolutely adore that game. It is lovely, and I think it really stands up. I played Eternal Darkness. I have to remind people of that because clearly nobody was interested in that video. I got so few views on it, and I think I said at the time it was probably YouTube video suicide doing a video about a game that hardly anybody bought. It was a really poor selling game. It only sold 500,000 copies. We're talking about Smash Brothers Melee in a moment, and Smash Brothers Melee sold over 7 million. It was the best selling game on the GameCube. So yeah, I mean, that pales into its significance when we start talking about Grand Theft Auto, but 7 million was pretty respectable. 500,000 not so much so. So those are 2 games that I've been playing. Obviously I mentioned there, I'm going to just grab my pile of games here. We'll just quickly run through those. I also did the video last week where I talked about my top 10, and I have played all of those. The game I've played the most will come as no surprise, which is Zelda, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, which, as I mentioned last week, has neither Zelda or Link in it. But they are referenced. But I love this game, and I've been playing this even today. I've been playing this game, and I just absolutely love it. It's brilliant, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I'm sure you're all sick of hearing about it. Played a bit of Super Monkey Ball. That game is as annoying and as frustrating as it's always been. Yeah, there's a couple of those on the GameCube which I really enjoyed. Mentioned Luigi's Mansion already. Super Smash Brothers Melee, what a great party game this is. This is one to play with your mates, get a load of controllers together. It's completely mad, it's completely bonkers. I said this in my top 10 videos before. Best-selling game on the Cube. This is what Nintendo do really well. This get together and let's play on the same screen and just have a bit of a laugh. That, and of course, Super Mario Kart Double Dash. Those 2 are fantastic games to play with friends. And I don't think that any other console games manufacturer does it as well as Nintendo. I think they are the best at that sort of thing where you get people round and you have competitions or you do cooperative missions together. It is absolutely fantastic. So really good fun playing Mario Kart and Super Smash Brothers Melee. Played a bit of Metroid Prime. Beautiful game, absolutely beautiful looking game. One of the prettiest games I think in the entire generation. It is a lovely looking game. Graphics on this blew me away. and I absolutely love Metroid Prime. And another game that is also graphically fantastic is Star Wars Rogue Leader Rogue Squadron 2. An incredibly frustrating game, as I've mentioned before, but also graphically absolutely brilliant. We've mentioned Eternal Darkness, of course, already. Go check out my video. Please, somebody go check out my video. Nobody watched my video. Yeah, no surprises. No surprises. But if you like spooky games, if you like Resident Evil, go check out Eternal Darkness. It is a great game. It is really good. Definitely go play it. You don't have to go and watch my video, of course, but definitely go give it a look. Really, really good fun as well. The Super Mario entry on the Cube, I have played this a little bit, although not much, and I know I have controversial opinions about Super Mario Sunshine in that I'm not the biggest fan of this game, and I mean that in as much as it is not my favourite Mario game. It isn't a bad game at all by any stretch of the imagination. It's a great game and it looks beautiful, but for me it is one of the weaker Mario entries. I much prefer, there's a lot more that I prefer elsewhere. Super Mario Sunshine irritated me when I played it, and so I didn't get particularly far with it. Maybe I need to go and give it another look. Perhaps I'll do that one day and go and give it another look. Wave Race Blue Storm, that is a great fun game to play again with your friends. I feel like this is sort of in that SSX genre of just playing, just racing and mucking about and doing stunts. It's good fun, it's harmless fun, it's a really good looking game, some great water effects on it, which I think look fantastic. Certainly at the time they absolutely blew my mind, so it was really, really good. And then probably just a couple of other games that I've had a bit of a look at. So Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, which I quite liked randomly. I played the first one, the Philosopher's Stone, on the PlayStation. Well, it was a PlayStation 1 game actually, which is actually not a bad game. It really isn't. Neither is this. And the thing about this game was, the thing that I specifically remember is how good it looked. And I remember seeing things like, like the little things like reflections on the tiles on the floor and stuff like that was just, this is amazing. This is incredible. Not a bad little game. Not a die-hard classic by any stretch of the imagination. And a bit of Sonic as well. Played a little bit of Sonic as well. And we'll talk a little bit about Sonic in a minute. But I'll keep you guessing as to what that might relate to. So there you go. Those are the games that I've been playing this month. And I mean, there's obviously more to play on the GameCube. But I have really, really enjoyed all of these games. Just really, really good fun, and it has been great to go back. And as I mentioned, there are a couple of games that I have really enjoyed going and revisiting. Super Smash Bros. Melee and Zelda, probably two of the best ones there. But I also completed Luigi's Mansion right at the beginning of the month. Got through that pretty quick and really enjoyed playing that with my son. And in fact, he's actually looking to get 2 and 3 on the Nintendo Switch actually to go and play and have another look at those as well. So some really, really good games. Nintendo are absolutely brilliant when it comes to their own IP. When it comes to Nintendo games, the quality of the games is just so good. You never get a Nintendo game that is just glitchy or needs a million updates or whatever. It's just always just so polished, and the quality is always there. And the GameCube is no exception to that. The Nintendo entries are just fantastic. Every single one of them is just brilliant. They are just really, really well put together. They look great. And I think the thing with the GameCube as well, the GameCube games, is I always felt the GameCube games looked better than the PlayStation 2 games. Now, I always loved the PlayStation 2. It's one of my favourite consoles. But I do think the GameCube games did look better. I thought they were a bit more polished, a bit more colourful. They had a bit more depth in terms of the graphics and everything else like that. But it's not everything. It's not everything, and I think the lack of third-party titles on the GameCube was a real problem. We just didn't see much of, for instance, Electronic Arts. And yes, Electronic Arts shovel a lot of rubbish out, but they also do have some diehards games that people will always go and revisit, and you kind of need some of those on your platform to draw people in. People will go, well, I can play that on there. Then they'll go and explore a couple of other games as well. So I think it can be a problem if you don't get that third-party support, and I think that definitely was a problem for Nintendo. Alright then, so that was the games. Let's talk a little bit now then. If you're interested in any of what I've talked about today and you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to get myself into some GameCube gaming? What can I do? What are my options? What are the tips? So let's get on to the next section. I'll talk to you about it there. Alright then, so you're thinking to yourself, I'd really quite like to get back into a bit of GameCube gaming. I've watched Andy talking about it and I'm loving what I'm seeing, and his video is incredibly engaging, and I'm desperately keen to go and play some GameCubes now. You've inspired me. So what do I do? What are my options? Well, there are quite a few options for GameCube actually, a little more than with a lot of other consoles, yeah, I'm going to just talk you through those now. So obviously your first option is to go and buy yourself a GameCube. They are incredibly robust little devices, these, and they have stood the test of time. Tell you what, I think that generation, the 6th generation, you know, like without wishing to tempt fate, had some of the sort of most reliable consoles. You know, like if you pick up a Dreamcast, if you pick up a PlayStation 2 or an Xbox, they're pretty robust devices. You know, I had 3 PlayStation 3s. They all the first 2 broke down on me. You know, so, and I've PlayStation 4 that I've got is like a Chinook. When when I turn it on, it sounds like it's taking off because it has problems with its cooling. The Xbox 360 had problems. This generation produced some really robust little consoles. So go and find yourself a GameCube. They're not stupidly expensive. You know, you should be looking at sort of £80–90 for a reasonable one. You might get a bit of yellowing on the front there, but they're not too expensive. Obviously the black ones are a little bit cheaper as well, so if you're not worried about the colour, go and find yourself one of those. And there are still a lot of third-party peripherals. So this is I mentioned before, this is a little third-party GameCube memory card. Works perfectly well. There are lots of little third-party controllers and those kind of things that you can buy as well. Now obviously the age-old problem with this is if you want to plug this into your HDMI television, that can be a bit of an issue. Now if you've got an older television, so this one behind me is an older one here, you could just plug it straight into that. But I would definitely recommend getting one of these. I generally recommend them if they're available, which is the Rad2X. The lovely thing about this is that this will plug into your SNES, your N64 and your GameCube, so you will be able to use this with all 3 of those consoles. They're about £50 if you can find one. They can be quite hard to find the Nintendo one. It doesn't need a separate power source like the one for the Sonys. It does have a little smoothing option switch on the back there, which does just sort of smooth the graphics. It does actually make quite a nice little difference, especially for the GameCube. These are great. They have a little mini HDMI output. They're so simple. I love these because they're so simple to use. You plug it into the back of the GameCube, plug your HDMI in there, plug it into the TV, switch the GameCube on, you're good to go. So they are really good. You can look at other things as well, OSSC. There's other ways of getting the signal converted to HDMI for your television. It's got quite a good component. I always got to get component and composite mixed up. Got a good component output as well. So there is like a digital video out and all that kind of thing. Don't worry about any of that. This is what you want. If you can get yourself one of these, this is great. So that's if you want to buy an original GameCube. That is a really, really good option. Just go find yourself an original GameCube. Now, the other option that you have available to you, and this is also quite a cheap option, I'm just going to pull this out here, apologies for all the noise, crash bang wallop, is the Wii. So this is the console that came after the GameCube. Not all Wiis are created equal, so what you want to do is if you're picking up a Wii, or you already have a Wii, you want to open the top up. If you can open the top up, I can't open the top one, can't open the top, because I opened it the wrong way. And you'll see that it's got some GameCube controller slots in here, and also the slots for the cards as well. So newer versions of the Wii, I understand, don't have that. The lovely thing about the Wii is it's an incredibly cheap console to pick up because they sold so many of them. They are still relatively cheap to pick up, and you basically pop the GameCube disc in the middle there, and it will load the GameCube disc up as if you were loading any other game on here as well. Now, there is also with the Wii another option, which is that you can mod your Wii, and it will actually, basically the architecture is very, very similar. It will essentially just run GameCube games, and you can get them digitally as well, and to put them on a SD memory card and pop them on there as well. Obviously, I would not condone getting games that you don't own, so I would suggest that you just buy the disc and pop it in. If you have a newer version of the Wii that won't support that, that's maybe where you want to look at it. So you go, I've got the disc, but I can't play it. Obviously, you can grab the digital version and just pop it in there as well. So the Wii is a really, really good option because a lot of people have a Wii sitting around in their loft or you know, like in their attic or just not being used. Or you could pick a second-hand one up really, really cheap. So if you really want to get into GameCube and you don't want to sort of spend the sort of money to get a GameCube, you want something a little bit newer, the Nintendo Wii is gonna be your winner here. I don't believe that the Wii U, which came after the Wii, supports GameCube, so just be wary of that. Not least, it doesn't have the ports for the GameCube controllers as well. They're also cheap, and as I mentioned before, you can pick those up proprietary ones as well. So if you want to get your GameCube controller, you can pick those up online, and you can buy a really cheap sort of non-standard Nintendo one, non-Nintendo one. So that's the other option there. Third option is something called the Dolphin emulator. Now, the Dolphin emulator is fantastic. It is a brilliant emulator, and as I mentioned before, the code name for the for the GameCube was the Dolphin, actually. So I assume that's where the name came from. And this is what's running here at the moment. So this is running on my my Mac. You can run it on a PC as well, on Windows, and you can see it's running quite nicely in the back here. I do have a newer computer now, so that is helping. The GameCube is a little, the GameCube emulator, the Dolphin emulator, is a little bit resource hungry. So some games that are a bit more intensive can run a little bit slow. You might struggle with something like a Raspberry Pi 4. You might get better results with the Raspberry Pi 5 if you're running the Dolphin emulator on there, but it will run on there. I generally find just having the emulator software itself rather than something like OpenEMU, which I have, which supposedly uses the Dolphin emulator engine, just doesn't work very well at all. Just goes for the straight Dolphin emulator. Get the you can find the ISOs online, and for the games that you own that are you're getting the backups for, of course. And then run it on here, and it's got good controller support. So what I use actually is I use this, which is actually a switch controller, a wired switch controller. These are really, really easy to set up with it. You just go into the configuration, you can save it up configuration, you tell it what buttons are what, and then I just use that. And it's good because it's not a million miles different from the GameCube controller in terms of the buttons that are available, because it's a Nintendo one. So where I tend to use the PlayStation 1 controller for a lot of emulators, the USB PlayStation 1 controller that I've got, this is really, really good for that. And these are also really, really cheap to buy. They're not pricey at all. If you buy a wireless one, obviously that's a little bit more complicated, and I don't know how you'd necessarily get that set up. So wired USB controller, really, really good for using on an emulator. So that's the emulator option, and a really good option at that. You will need a little bit of poke with your computer to get that to run. And I'm not talking about, you know, the latest and greatest gaming PC, but something that's, you know, reasonably recent, and you should be good to go. Okay, so we've talked about getting a GameCube, we've talked about getting a Wii, and we've talked about running the emulator. There is one more option, which is now a newly available option. So for all of you out there, the big Nintendo fans, or those of you who are thinking, well, for those of you who are already owning a Switch 2, you'll already know this, but on the Switch 2, like with the Switch, if you had the Nintendo Online subscription, you got access to games on a load of different platforms. Obviously, just the games that Nintendo choose to give you, but you've had Game Boy, SNES, N64, NES, and even the Sega Mega Drive on the original Switch. Now, on the Switch 2, they have also added GameCube support as well. So there is a GameCube emulator on the Switch 2. It only has a couple of games at the moment. One of them is Zelda Wind Waker, as it happens. But that library, Nintendo adds to that library, to the libraries for their other stuff all the time. So I'm expecting there to be a few more bits and pieces on there. I'd love to see Luigi's Mansion make an appearance on there. So if you're thinking about buying a Switch 2, then maybe don't worry about the other things that I mentioned, because you'll have some options there as well. But obviously you'll be limited to whatever Nintendo choose to let you play. So hopefully there's a few options for you there, and some tips on getting connected back up. So yeah, I think that's probably it. Let's just talk now, finally, about what it has actually been like to live with the GameCube for a month, and I will also announce to you what the next console is going to be for my next month with. Right then, so let's wrap this up fairly quickly. Thanks for sticking with me. GameCube then, the last month, what has it been like? Well, I have absolutely loved it. I've genuinely really loved having the GameCube back in the living room for this last month. I have played on it loads, and to be honest with you, I've done quite a few of these month with videos now. I loved having the Master System, played quite a bit of time on that. I think I've probably played more time on the GameCube than I have on any of the month with series that I've done, any of the month with episodes that I've done. I've really enjoyed it. There's just so many good games, and they're just very engrossing. You know, I've played loads of Wind Waker, I've played loads of Luigi's Mansion, and loads of other things as well, just little bits here and there. Kids have been more into it. We've done Mario Kart. The only thing I haven't done actually is I haven't really played much of this. I haven't really played much of the Donkey Kong Bongos. I bought them quite a while ago now, and when I bought them originally, I got the GameCube out and plugged it in, and we had a go on it, and we had a bit of a play, and it was quite good fun. But this time round, yeah, that's the only one I haven't really played, but given everything else a really good go. So I have really enjoyed it, and I think probably I'm gonna pop the GameCube out in the living room a little bit more, because I have really enjoyed playing that, and I think the same will be the case. There's lots and lots of consoles I've still got to review with you, and there's going to be a few more I think that probably fall into that category. Like I said, I love the Master System. I've loved all of them, to be honest. I have really enjoyed every single month with that I've done. Possible exception of the BBC, that was a bit hard going, but everything else I have really loved. So yes, definitely recommend getting yourself back into GameCube, whether it's buying yourself a GameCube or just getting onto it with the Switch 2 or getting in the emulator or any of those kind of things. Just go and have another look. And if you've got a Wii knocking around, really you've got no excuse. Go and find yourself a cheap non-proprietary controller and a memory card, and grab yourself a couple of GameCube games from, you know, your local sort of second-hand game seller, and give it a go. I promise you, if you're a Nintendo fan, you won't regret it. It is just really good fun. So there we go. That is my month with Nintendo, and I kind of don't want to say goodbye to it, and I'm only putting it in here, right? It's not like it's died. So I'm just putting it back in here. It's not like it's gone away. But yes, I have really enjoyed that. So what is next? What is coming up for the month of July? I've already decided what's coming up for August. I might allude to it as we go through the month, but July was a trickier one because I didn't want to do another 6th generation console. I've got a couple more of those I could do. I could do the Dreamcast or the PlayStation 2. I haven't done those yet, but I didn't really want to do another 6th gen after doing another 6th gen. I didn't want to do another Nintendo because I've just done a Nintendo. I didn't want to do another handheld because it's not that long since I did the last one, and there might be another one coming up soon. There's a massive clue for you. So it was a bit tricky, and I didn't want to. Like I say, the only other 8-bit console, it was really down to, there was only other one 8-bit console that I could do, which I'm going to do later in the year, which is the Intellivision. So that only really left me with a couple of choices, and that was, I could have done the Intellivision, obviously, the Sega Mega Drive or the Sega CD. Now, I didn't want to do the Sega CD because I haven't done the Sega Mega Drive yet. So, or Mega CD for those of us in the UK. So, you've probably guessed it, I am going to be doing the Mega Drive. This 16-bit wonder from the 4th generation is where I'm going next, and this is a console that is very well loved. I mentioned Sonic earlier, that's why I mentioned Sonic earlier. I actually have two Sega Mega Drives. I've got the original, this is the Sega Mega Drive 1. I also have the Sega Mega Drive 2, which is attached to the Mega CD. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this, and I'm really looking forward to getting into some Sonics. I discovered something about one of the Sonic games just recently, which was very interesting, which I will talk to you, and there will be a video about that later on. So there will be a Sonic-based video, as there was for the Master System. But yes, this 16-bit wonder is my July console of choice. So this will be going into the living room, and I will be playing lots and lots of games on here, and there are some classics on here, some games that I really love, so looking forward to that. So that is next month, and that's kind of a chunk of mine now and next, but let's just talk about what other things I've got coming up. Well, mostly Mega Drive stuff, right? I'm going to be doing a Sonic feature, and yes, I will also be doing the Colin McRae 2.0 challenge, lap time challenge as well from Retro Steve, so that's also coming up very shortly. I'm just waiting for that to turn up. Yeah, it's going to be very much a Sega focused month, so probably not much more to say at this point. I haven't got any road trips coming up. So yeah, let's get strapped in for some Sega action over the next 4 weeks or so. And that's it. That's it for today. So if you enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. Do really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed my GameCube retrospective, and I hope you're kind of inspired to go and have a look at this, and go and check out some of my other month with videos as well if you're thinking about some other consoles, you're thinking about starting to collect or getting back into some of it. I started with emulators before I started collecting the consoles themselves, so you know, it's a great way of getting back into stuff. But yeah, that just leaves me to say I think that's it for the day, so please do all take care of yourselves. I'll see you around. Bye for now.